Oh, good God, what have I done? So, today we are back to TB2. It's been a while since I did a video on this, and I was supposed to have this out yesterday, hopefully, assuming this comes out on time, and a lot of things came up. Basically, long story short, it didn't get done. But here it is, so you know what? Whatever. Dio Part 3 is the character on the docket for today, and he's okay. Honestly, using Dio is very, very situational. Might as well get this out of the way now. If you're trying to use Dio Part 3 in 1v1s, I would just recommend against it. Dio Part 3 in 1v1s is frankly just not very good, and I'll explain why throughout the entire video, so I'm not going to talk all about it now. But what you need to know if you don't want to watch this video is do not use Dio in 1v1s. It's just not worth it. Don't do it. Now, as for the main game in 2v2s, that's where Dio really shines. He's an absolute powerhouse in both of these modes. His time-stopping ability is absolutely invaluable when you can actually get it off. And in 2v2s in main game, it's very easy to have some other person give you an opening where you can get the time stop off. And because of this, you can do massive amounts of damage. Now, enough vague talking about things without actually explaining myself. Let's jump into the moveset, then we can get one step closer to figuring out exactly why I feel the way I do. Alrighty, so as per usual, I'm going to start off with talking about the M1s, and just like other stand M1s that I've talked about in the past, your stand in this game is completely intangible. What this means is that your stand can't take damage from enemy attacks, but you do benefit from the increased range that the stand gives you. This means that your M1 attacks against people that don't have a stand are very, very good. Basically what I'm saying is, you can outrange anyone that does not have a stand. It's something I note on all of my reviews on characters that have stands, and will continue to do so just in case people aren't aware of it. As for Dio's other moves in his base form, his 1 is a simple barrage that does 0.45 damage per hit. His 2 is Time Breaker, which teleports you in front of your opponent and then hits them for 15 damage. This move also block breaks. His 3, after a short windup, he throws a cluster of knives. His 4 is Stand Jump, which propels you a massive distance upon pressing the key. And finally, his 5 is where things get interesting. The time stop. Something about the time stop that I haven't seen noted in any sort of media for this game, and by that I mean tutorials and in-game media, not outside media like content creators, is that Dio's time stop scales with how many people you've killed. This meaning the more people you've killed, the longer your time stop is, and the larger your time stop is. After messing around a bunch in training mode, you probably saw my results earlier. You can have time stops that are massive and absurdly long. Obviously, you would never ever in a million years be able to get to this level of time stop in an actual match, considering that I had about 100 kills while doing this. But if you are looking for a little bit of fun, if you get, I think it's about 120 kills, you can time stop, and your time stop is so long that your time stop will be off cooldown by the time the initial time stop ends. A little bit of more useless facts for you, but there isn't technically a damage cap in the time stop. I was able to kill 2 different players in one time stop, so obviously there's not a cap, but there does seem to be a cap on how much damage knives can do, or at least how many you can throw. No matter how many knives I threw in the time stop, I could never make it so that it one-hit somebody. And when I threw them in a circle, I could see that they were just disappearing the more I threw. So I think it is kind of interesting that there's a cap on this, but there's not actually a damage cap. It's not knowledge you would ever really need to know, but hey, knowledge is power, so you never know. The last thing to note about Dio's time stop, and it does kind of bleed into the awakening section, but the time stop for his awakening is completely unaffected by how many kills you have. It's always the same amount of time that's stopped, and it's always the same distance that time gets stopped in. I did think it was kind of funny that the awakening time stop was significantly shorter than my normal time stop. Anyways, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. The last move for base Dio isn't really a move at all. It's your awakening. Upon pressing X, Dio will consume Joseph Joestar's blood and awaken the power of the greatest high. This ability changes some of your moveset and buffs up some of your existing moves. Your 1 is replaced from a normal barrage to a shorter kick barrage, which does more damage. Your 2 is still Time Breaker, but it comes out a whole lot faster and does 20 damage as opposed to the 15 damage that it used to do. Your 3 is still Knives, but they throw out more knives, which in turn do more damage. Your stand jump for your 4 is replaced with Road Roller, where you jump into the sky and bring down a Road Roller that does 20 damage. Your 5 is a time stop that I already kind of talked about, but is capable of one-shot killing someone from full health. Your X is replaced with Life Drain, which does a small amount of damage, but heals you when you use it. But with that, I'm done with the moveset, so let's jump into BNBs and strategies. Dio doesn't really have any crazy combos. His base BNB is 4 mouse 1s into a barrage, and there's really not a whole lot more you can get off of this. Because of your TP dashes, which is something I should have mentioned in the moveset and I completely forgot. By the way, your dashes are instant. Probably should have mentioned that. Anyways, because of these, you can usually get away with dashing at someone after a barrage and punching them, but because of the way game latency works, even if you hit them, which you will most of the time, if they're mashing dash, they'll get out of it anyway. An alternative to doing this combo is to do 4 mouse 1s into a time breaker, but this one's really inconsistent, and you should never do it if you have the barrage off cooldown. As for the last really important thing you need to know about Dio's base form is what you should do with time stop. Almost every single Dio player you will see in your entire life will use time stop incorrectly in the base form. The best way to get damage in time stop is to stop time, throw knives, punch them twice, throw knives, punch them twice, throw knives for a 3rd time, which you should be able to do if I remember correctly, and then right as the TS is ending, start doing a mouse 1 combo. Do 4 mouse 1s and then do a barrage. Now I know some of you are asking, why don't you just use every single one of your moves and the knives and be able to just straight one-shot someone? And the reason for this is because the knockback in time stop is incredibly inconsistent. It's very consistent on the dummies in training mode, and sure, you could probably one-shot someone in here, but when it actually comes down to playing the game, this is the strategy to go for. For those curious why it works, there's a damage threshold where once you go over a certain amount of damage, you get knocked back in time stop. But if you don't go over this damage threshold, you won't get knocked back and you'll be able to combo them off of it. There are some other nuances about time stop, but I want to finish talking about BNBs before I get there so that this video actually has some sort of continuity going. Your BNBs when you're awakened are very, very similar to what they were before. True combos are 4 mouse 1s into kick barrage. I'm pretty sure 4 mouse 1s into time breaker is now true, and if it's not, it's very close to it because of how much faster time breaker is. I also neglected to realize that you can also do 4 mouse 1s into a life drain, which is pretty important considering that you can get your health back off of it. Now as for the BNBs and time stop, this is where things differ completely from the base form. Remember how I said that you shouldn't use any of your moves in the time stop other than knives for your base form? Well, this flips everything on its head. In here, you want to use everything but your knives. Because of how wonky the hitboxes are on the knives, if you hit every single one of your moves in time stop other than that, and mash clicks, you'll be able to one-shot the person. That's right, 100 health to 0 if you use every single one of your moves and click them enough times. So there you have it. There's all the BNBs I've got covered. Let's jump into actual strategies and talk about some of the nuances that I avoided talking about earlier. So the biggest thing, and probably one of the only things that I'm going to be addressing here, is your time stop. In 1v1s, time stop is an awful move. It's very, very bad. And the reason it's bad is because it's extremely easy to cancel. I don't know the exact damage numbers, but if you get hit with enough damage, your time stop gets canceled and it doesn't come out. And with how long the animation is for the startup of the time stop, any player that has any idea what they're doing is just going to save one of their moves that cancels your time stop until they hear you screaming, "Zawodo!" and then they bop you and now you don't have a time stop anymore and you're getting comboed for it. When it comes to when you can actually use your time stop in 1v1s, basically, the only time you can use it is if your opponent is completely brain dead, or if they're using a counter and you manage to bait it. Other than this, you're probably just never going to get a time stop. Another thing about the time stop is that when your opponent sees you time stopping, they will almost every single time dash away, because why wouldn't they? That's the correct play. But if they do dash away and you're hitting them in the time stop, when it ends, whatever momentum they had when they were running away carries over when the time stop ends. You won't actually see this momentum though. So if you're comboing someone in time stop and they dash backwards and you see them in the middle of the dash backwards animation, when you want to catch them at the end of the time stop to M1 them into your combo, you need to make sure that the M1s that you use at the end of the time stop to catch them are in the position where they were dashing back rather than where it looks like they are on the time stop. It's something that I didn't figure out until a lot later playing this character, and once you figure it out, it makes the character a whole lot more consistent because people can't just seemingly teleport out of the stun after they get time stopped. Quick note, this also applies if people are walking backwards. If you see someone walking backwards, make sure you aim a little bit further back, because at the end of the TS, they're probably going to teleport a little bit backwards because that's where they are on their screen, not on yours. Other coolio notes about the time stop is that all of the moves that require you to stop time in order to use them are disabled while time is stopped. This means that your dashes are no longer TP dashes, they're normal dashes. Your time breaker goes from being a pretty bad move to a really fast, strong heavy punch that block breaks, since it's just a heavy punch and no longer has the teleport at the beginning of it. And this effect applies no matter who's stopped time. So if a Jotaro or another Dio stops time in your match, it's the same for everyone, and your moves become, well, better. Also, something I'm sure about every single one of you know, but I should mention it anyway, and I should have mentioned it in the moveset, but when you stop time, your knife cooldown goes down drastically. This paves the way to what happens if you miss your time stop. Well, you're probably just going to get punished for throwing out the time stop anyway, but if your opponent dodges it while time is stopped, you need to make use of the effects even if they didn't get hit. This means try to get them with a time breaker, since you probably can't use this move outside of when time is stopped, and throw as many knives as you can. Your opponent will probably block them, but hey, you've got the cooldowns, you might as well use them. Aside from that, the strategies for Dio are really simple, and I don't even know if I have to say that much about them. Other than info you need to know about time stop, this character is basically entirely based around the time stop. There's not a whole lot to say about the rest of the character itself. They can't really do anything but time stop, which is the main reason that I said that they sucked in 1v1s, and it does suck in 1v1s. I guess I could tell you that you should not use your knives before you use your time stop, because if you do that, then your knives will be on cooldown, and they don't benefit from the faster cooldown if they're already on cooldown. So if you ever use your time stop while your knives are on cooldown, you're a fool. Don't do that. And honestly, other than that, I don't know what to tell you strategy-wise. I think I've probably covered just about everything there is to cover, and there's not a whole lot to cover. It probably goes without saying, but if your teammate is getting comboed or comboing someone, you can run in and time stop them and get a bunch of damage, which is why this character is so good in 2v2s. But I feel like this is the kind of stuff I would put in the conclusion and not in the strategies, so we might as well get there and wrap up. I have a feeling it's going to be a short one. So honestly, as I'm sure you figured out by now, and I'll probably put it in the title, but Dio isn't really that good. I mean, he's not bad by any right, and like I said before, he's quite good in 2v2s, but I make these videos mostly focusing on 1v1s, and in that regard, he's just not very good. I would wager that most of the people watching this don't even play 1v1s, or rarely play 1v1s, especially based off of my YBA polls as of recently. So for you guys, Dio's probably great. But for me personally, he just doesn't really cut it. He doesn't have any good B&B combos. His biggest source of damage is basically just one giant gimmick that's very easy to counter once you know how to counter it. And his Awakening, all things being considered, really isn't that good. Sure, the Awakening time stop is quite good, but outside of that, Road Roller's stupid easy to parry. I still have plenty of people that avoid the time breaker. The knives are still blockable, so they don't get you damage. And in order to start a combo, I still need to start an M1 combo just like any other character I would be playing. I don't really want to go as far as to say that Dio's bad though, because I think that one gimmick he does have is quite powerful, and it works against quite a few people. But in higher echelons of play, you're just not going to be able to use this character. Maybe there's some tech I don't know about, but from where I stand right now, Dio just is a cut below the rest. Anyways, that's about all I got, so let me know what you think in the comments. Have a wonderful day or night wherever you are, and I'll see you next time.